This video is brought to you by GiveWell. Ever since he became Prime Minister last year, one of Sunak's main priorities has been to manage a deeply divided party. One that was more focused on settling scores and assigning blame for their 20-point poll deficit than it was fighting Labour. For most of the last year, Sunak succeeded in keeping the party together, and it seemed the battle for the soul of the Tory Party had been, if not halted, at least delayed. However, in the last week or so, factionalism has once again come to the fore, after the resignation of Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick sparked a furious internal row over the Tories' new Rwanda policy. So in this video, we're going to have a look at what the Rwanda plan is, Sunak's proposed amendments, and how it's tearing the Tory Party apart. Before we start, if you haven't already, please consider subscribing and ringing the bell to stay in the loop and be notified when we release new videos. Let's start by looking at exactly what the Rwanda plan is. It's not actually all that new, with the first agreement between the UK and the Rwandan government coming in April 2022, under then Home Secretary Priti Patel. The idea is for asylum seekers that make it to the UK to be sent to Rwanda, where their claims would be assessed. If approved, they'd be resettled in Rwanda instead of the UK, and if not, then they'd be sent back to their country of origin. It is, in essence, a way to deter asylum seekers. Now, the government has been hit with quite a few roadblocks. The first flight, which was meant to take off on the 14th of June, was blocked at the last minute by the European Court of Human Rights. Now, for context, the European Court of Human Rights is the court that enforces the European Convention of Human Rights, to which the UK is party. The case then went to the High Court, who ruled that the Rwanda plan was lawful. This was challenged and sent to the Court of Appeal, who overturned the ruling, stating that the plan was unlawful as Rwanda isn't a safe country. The government appealed this, bringing the issue to the Supreme Court, who agreed with the Court of Appeal that Rwanda isn't a safe country, and added that asylum seekers sent there face a real risk of ill treatment in circumstances where they should not have been returned at all. The Supreme Court found 5 ways in which Rwanda's judicial system isn't robust enough to accurately assess asylum claims, and could lead to legitimate asylum seekers being returned to a country where they would face torture, cruel or inhumane or degrading treatment. In international law, this is referred to as refoulement, which is outlawed by the UN Refugee Convention. Now, in response to this ruling, Sunak stated that he would do 2 things. First, his government would sign a new treaty with Rwanda that aims to improve the judicial situation in Rwanda that gave the Supreme Court cause for concern in the first place. Second, they would pass a new emergency bill that established in primary legislation that Rwanda is indeed a safe country. The Home Secretary, James Cleverly, has already announced that he's come to an agreement with the Rwandan government in the form of a legally binding treaty. It has not officially been ratified by the UK yet and needs to be presented to Parliament within 21 days. The treaty contains safeguards for asylum seekers and specifically bans Rwanda from resettling these asylum seekers. The only place Rwanda can send the asylum seekers is back to the UK if the UK requests it. In addition to this, there will be a joint committee to discuss the best practices of the plan. Now, this isn't all that controversial. The controversial bit is the proposed new legislation. In it, the government states that every decision maker must conclusively treat the Republic of Rwanda as a safe country. It even explicitly tells courts to ignore claims that Rwanda is sending asylum seekers to third countries. Now, this is actually pretty crazy. Essentially, the Supreme Court told the government Rwanda isn't safe, and the government responded by passing legislation saying, no, Rwanda is safe, and you guys should ignore people who say otherwise. This didn't go down well with either the Tory left, who thought it undermined the UK's commitment to international law and its obligations to asylum seekers, or the Tory right, who thought it didn't go far enough in restricting immigration. For instance, former Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick stated in his resignation letter that we said that we would stop the boats altogether. This emergency legislation is the last opportunity to prove this, but in its current drafting, it does not go far enough. Broadly speaking, the right of the party wants Sunak to go the full hog and leave the ECHR, which would make the UK the only country in Europe, apart from Russia and Belarus, outside of the convention. This divide has become glaringly obvious on social media. The official Conservative Twitter account posted a meme of a news presenter on the BBC who recently mistakenly gave the middle finger to the camera, with the caption, "Labour when you ask for their plans to tackle illegal migration." One Tory MP, Tobias Ellwood, called for the post to be deleted, whereas another, Jonathan Gullis, praised it, saying, "I approve this message." Sunak has defended the bill by pointing out that the Rwandan government told him they would suspend the agreement if he went further, because Rwanda doesn't want to be seen undermining international refugee law. But the Tory right are apparently unconvinced. Former Home Secretary Suella Braverman has complained that the legislation still allows individual asylum seekers to appeal their cases. And on Sunday, the chair of a group of right-wing conservatives wrote in the Sunday Telegraph that the legislation was not sufficiently watertight to meet the government's objectives. In a way, the Rwanda policy is following a similar trajectory to Brexit. Much like leaving the EU, the idea of deporting asylum seekers to a third country started out as a relatively fringe right-wing idea, but Sunak decided to make it the centrepiece of his premiership in an attempt to win over the right of his party and protect against the threat of a more right-wing party like Reform, which is currently polling over 10%. As with Brexit, this has apparently backfired, in that the government's relentless focus on immigration has only exacerbated intra-party divisions, and the government's inability to actually address the issue has only fueled the rise of Reform. The question now is whether, like Brexit before it, the Rwanda policy will topple the Prime Minister. It won't be too long until we find out, with the vote on the Rwanda bill due later today. If MPs from both the left and the right of the Conservative Party refuse to vote for the bill, there's a good chance it fails. This will put more pressure on Sunak's premiership, and even if it doesn't end with a leadership challenge, it'll accelerate the Tory doom loop, where disunity makes them less electable, which in turn makes them less unified, which restarts the cycle. Now, if you want more on this, we're releasing a podcast on this very channel this afternoon, so make sure you check back in then to find out more about it. There are over 1.5 million non-profit organisations in the US, and millions more around the world. So how do you know which ones make the biggest impact with your donations? GiveWell was founded to help donors with that exact question. They spend tens of thousands of hours poring over independent studies and charity data to help donors direct their funds to evidence-based organisations that are saving and improving lives. In fact, GiveWell has now spent over 15 years researching charitable organisations and only directs funding to a few of the highest impact opportunities they've found. That's things like vitamin A supplements, which cost as little as $1 to deliver, but can reduce vitamin A deficiency in children, thus improving mortality rates. Together, over 100,000 donors have used GiveWell to donate more than $1 billion. Rigorous evidence suggests that these donations will save over 150,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. In fact, in 2019, when we sold TLDR-branded pin badges for charity, we turned to GiveWell to help select the charities we donated to, ensuring the maximum impact of our giving. GiveWell wants as many donors as possible to make informed decisions about high-impact giving. As such, you can find all their research and recommendations on their site for free. You can make tax-deductible donations to their recommended funds or charities, and GiveWell doesn't take a cut. Plus, if you've never donated to GiveWell's recommended charities before, you can have your donation matched up to $100 before the end of the year, as long as matching funds last. To claim your match, go to givewell.org, pick YouTube and enter TLDR News at checkout. Do make sure they know that you heard about GiveWell from TLDR News in order to get your donation matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or find out more.